Hello and welcome to the 10th and final part of this video series of 3ds Max tips and tricks. In this video I'll be going over unwrapping techniques. I'll be assuming pretty much no knowledge of unwrapping, but for those of you that are familiar with it, I will be going through the basics pretty fast, so we should hopefully get to stuff you're not aware of fairly quickly. Okay, so this is the model I'm going to be unwrapping, just a kind of gladiator figure. He's fairly low poly, here we are, and first thing I'm going to do before I start is reset your X-form. Always do this, very important. If you don't do this and you have a bad X-form, then you can end up trying to use tools like relax and then performing very peculiarly. Okay, so first of all we apply an unwrap modifier. So just type in UN there, or make yourself a button. You'll probably use it a lot, so it's probably worth doing that. Under parameters there should be an edit button. Click that and we should bring up the edit UVs window. And this is might be what you're greeted with, a whole mess of higgledy-piggledy green and blue lines and a horrible mess. First thing you should do to bring it all under control is Control A to select everything. In faces, go to faces. You can use 1, 2 and 3 to swap between vertex, edge and face. I'm going to go into faces, Control A, mapping, flatten mapping. And I'm just going to accept the defaults. And what this does is this brings everything nicely into the box in the middle. These are really bad unwraps, but they are, they're relatively correctly sized, as in they're sized correct relative to one another. And I'm just going to move that over. When you're moving your different parts around, I'm just going to have a fiddle here. The freeform mode is a really nice one to get used to. If you select outside of it, you're deselecting. If you click anywhere and drag inside of it, you're moving. If you grab one of the middle 4 handles, you're rotating. And if you grab the corner ones, you're scaling. And there are shortcuts for these as well. So scaling, if I hold down Control, it will snap it to be proportional. If I hold down Shift, I will scale in just one axis. If I rotate and hold down Control, I'm snapping to 5 degrees. And if I move and hold down Shift, I'm moving it in just one axis. Okay, I now know that if I leave everything over here, I've forgotten it, but for now I'll just close this down, and I'll collapse down my UVs. Now, whenever you collapse down your unwrap UV modifier into your editable poly, you do not lose it, unless you delete it, obviously. But as long as you are sure to collapse it down, then the UV coordinates will be stored in your editable poly. So you're not losing them. The reason we always unwrap and then collapse down is several unwraps get really confusing, so be aware of that, try and avoid that. So I'll collapse down so that I can just select one portion of my gladiator model and unwrap just that element. So I'm going to start with the shield here, because that should be nice and easy. So unwrap. And if we go into edit, we're now only looking at the shield, which are these little bits that are left over here. So 3 to go into faces, and I'm going to pull them into here while I'm working on them. So I'm going to start off thinking about what I want this to look like when I'm done, remembering that my UVs should be a 2D representation of my geometry. So I want probably to portray this well and nice and flat will be a circle for this side and a circle for this side. Okay, so how am I going to do that? First of all, I'm going to select the faces of this circle. I'm just going to grow those, to pick all of those ones, and deselect those 3 and grow a couple more times. Grow is very useful for making selections. Right now, because I'm selecting one element, it's already highlighted in red. This is slightly frustrating because it makes it hard to see what I've got selected, but they are outlined with yellow squares, yellow lines. So right now I've got all of these circles selected, and I'm going to grow one more time and I'll just get the edge ones, and I've not got any of these back ones. You can see these are the back ones here, and I've not got those selected. Okay, so how are we going to get that all together? We can just use a quick planar map, which will take its best guess at which direction your geometry is facing, and it will sort of ask, well, how are you facing me? Which makes this nice circle here, but now I will point out the problem with it. I've got these edges here right on the top that are not facing towards the camera, and we can see that these are basically infinitely thin because they're not facing the the plane that I used for my quick planar map. Very easy way to solve this is, and this is really good, and I wouldn't be surprised if you told me that 90% of your unwrapping was using quick planar map followed by relax, and I'll show you that now. So tools, relax, and what this is doing, if I change this to relax by face angles, which I find to be much more effective than edge angles, so you can see what this has done is tried to make all of these faces approximately the right shape. I'm going to hit Z there. Z is a great little button for jumping straight to the bit you've got selected, and you can see it's shown by a little square and a line. So now we've got those represented properly, and I'm going to do the same thing again, quick planar map for this one. Dead easy, dead simple. Now I've got those finished, I'm just going to move those over to one side, to my right hand side. That's good, I'll collapse that down. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do the, I think I'll do the sword now. I'm not going to do this whole model, so don't worry if you're panicking. I'm just going to show you a little bit so I can show you different tricks. Go into unwrap just this model, and bring up the edit window, move over so you can see what's going on. Okay, for this one, just to show you the geometry a little bit, I've got, these are all welded down here, so if you take a cross section it's like a triangle, so these along the top, I've got a row of polys along the top, but this is very sharp at this end. So if you think of it like a triangle, then you should probably be able to picture what it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to pick all of the faces here, and I'm going to look at it from kind of above, I guess, and with ignore back facing on, I'm going to deselect all of them, which just leaves the ones on the back side showing. So now I'm going to do a quick planar on these, followed by a relax, the same technique we just used. Relax by face angles should be fine. Okay, now we know that the other side is the same shape, and let's say that we want to share texture space and we want it to occupy the exact same shape. Well, how are we going to do that? First of all, we're going to make the selection that we want, so with ignore back facing on here, this should now work. So I'll do a quick planar map, and I'm going to relax it again. So in theory we've done the exact same thing, and I'm going to now flip it, tools, flip horizontal, and it's occupying about the same space, but we don't want it about, we want exactly. So what we'll do is we'll line this up approximately, scale it around a bit so that it's close. I'm then going to go into vert, so I can click here, or I can press 1 on my keyboard, select all of them of both objects, and I'm going to right click, and I'm going to go well selected. And what that'll do is that'll put any that are close to each other to be exactly on top of each other. Now I've missed a couple here, so I'm going to move these. I could have moved these before, but never mind. I'll go to faces just because this will be a bit quicker with faces, and I'll just pull these up to be about where they are, and that one closer, and let's try again, and hopefully we'll get all of them this time. Or maybe that one a bit closer. Well selected. There we are. So these are all now stitched together, which isn't actually technically correct. And a quick way of breaking these apart is if we select them again and right click and just click break. Now these are occupying the same space, but if I move this away you can see that we no longer have just one, they're both separate. Quick way to select one element is to tick this select element box, and now if I pick this one it'll pick the whole lot at once. Good. So now we've got the blade sorted. How are we going to get that top row neatly on top? This is another technique you can use. I'm going to scale this, rotate this so it's about horizontal, just a little bit nice to look at. This is the back face here, and this is where my polys should be going. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of the remaining ones. Now these have already been flatten mapped, but I'm going to do it again just to be sure. Now this has got some of them together. For the technique I'm about to do, I actually don't want any of these to be together at all, so I'm going to do flatten mapping. I'm going to do face angle threshold as 0, and this will make them all separate little polygons, and it'll make them all relatively the correct size, which is the thing we want. So I'm going to move my blade up here, and you might be thinking, where am I going with this? Just bear with me. I'm going to scale these so these are about the right size, and this does take a bit of guesswork, so bear with me here. I'm going to go into edges, untick select element. I'm going to pick one edge, and I'm going to click stitch selected. Now that's too small, so I'm going to scale these all up again. Stitch selected. That's a little bit too big, somewhere a bit smaller, and you should try and be accurate with this. That's close enough, I think. So to do this neatly, we just in edges we click one of them. Unfortunately, because I got the two on top of each other, it's going to be a bit of a faff. I'm going to, for now, just move this one down. I'll move it back in a second. Turn off select element. Right click, stitch selected. Now I wish there was a way of setting up a shortcut for this, but there isn't. But you can see what's happening as I go along. I'm making a little backbone to my sword, which is quite neat. Okay, and now we've got that set up just nicely. And I'm going to move this back. I could weld it again and get it spot on, but frankly it's close enough. So for these ones here, we've got slight gaps. It might be nice to actually remove those gaps. So I'm going to pick all the verts in that element. I've not got the other ones selected. I'm going to go on weld selected, and that'll weld all of those together. Nice, neat, tidy. So that's another little technique. Stitch selected. Another little trick you can use to find where you should be connecting things to is I've turned on now show vertex connections. That's under display, show vertex connections, and you can see that it numbers all the other bits that are connected to that vert, which can sometimes be useful. I also find it quite nice if I'm selecting faces. What's happened here is the edge, the seam that that this face is connected to has gone blue. So if I were to break away this one, right click, break and move, you can see that this is now blue, and if I select off of it, it goes back to green. So blue is all the faces that this is connected to. So I'll just undo that and put that back. Alright, so that's basically done now. A good trick to make sure that you're not stretching anywhere and to see where your unwrap is kind of going is you'll notice that we have a checkerboard here. If I turn off the grid, this becomes a little bit more obvious. So you can see we've got like this checker pattern. And this actually does go on forever, and we can increase the number of times we see this by going into options and increasing the tile bitmap tiles to more than one if you like. And you can do this with your own textures as well. But to see this on your model very quickly, and this will be true of pretty much any of them, is this drop down here, which is how you choose which background you're using. If we click on it again, although it's already selected, we click on it now, we'll see the checker pattern on our model. Whoops. And this is really useful. You can see now, if I scale this down, you can see where why this one's bad. Look at all the breaking of there's no even checkers, but the ones that we've done hopefully should look nice and even. So all these squares are about the same size, and when we go around the model, like the blade here, this will line up with the one on the other side. And the checker pattern should carry on around this here. And if it's too big for you, which it sometimes is, just scale your object up on your unwrap. So let's make this much bigger, and you can see we've now got a much tighter checker pattern. In fact, that's probably too big for you to even see here. So we can check there's no stretching whatsoever happening. I mentioned before that you can change the background. I'll show you how to do that now. This is great if you've already got a texture in mind before you're unwrapping, which sometimes happens for particularly for things like any objects which are sharing a texture with something else, or which are using a tiling texture. It can be nice to see the texture behind this. So to change that, we just bring the drop down. If you've already assigned a material to your texture, then you'll probably be given a few choices here of for example, the diffuse and normal. You might be able to see those, but I don't, so I'm just going to go pick texture, go into bitmap, and I'm going to load up the grass texture that we had before, because, well, why not? There it is. And now we can see it behind our object. A couple of things though, it looks very, very dark, and it always does, and I don't know why, but the default, and again, I brought this by clicking on options here, the default brightness is 0.5. Bring it up to 1, and that's probably more like what your texture actually is. Frustratingly, you can't actually go higher than 1. I don't know why that is. And you can tile it more often. But another thing that people don't realize is this looks very blurry. The reason for that is because, again, by default, dumbest default setting ever, the use custom bitmap size is on. Untick that and it will go to the actual bitmap size of your texture. And this can be useful if you've got a texture which is not square. So, for example, a 2:1 ratio texture that's, I don't know, 512 by 256 will now sort of look correct, and your texture grid will be out here, so you can unwrap it much more easily. Other useful things in this window are if you've got several material IDs, let's say you're working with multi-sub objects, you can bring this down and you can look at your other material IDs. The final sort of hand tweaking thing that I'm going to show you now is target welding. So I'm going to click on one of my points, I'm going to right click, go to target weld, and now I simply click and drag to where I want to target weld, and I can go along the whole thing and do this by hand. Additionally, you might want to make sort of more generic changes. Let's say that although this blade shape we've got now is absolutely correct, we might find that perhaps it doesn't fit into our texture space very well, and we'd quite like to move it around a little bit, but moving these all by hand will probably result in some really bad misshaping, and before you know it, the sword isn't at all the shape that you had it before. It's just a pain to get it done correctly and evenly. So what we do instead is we use soft selection. So we turn soft selection on, select the ones at our very end, and we can see a color change from red through orange, yellow, green through to blue, and now when we move these, it will move it much more gently, and that will sort of spread across our change. So if I perhaps move this up a little bit and pick these ones here and move these up a little bit, and the ones in the middle down a little bit more, then we have a shape which is now, I'll turn soft selection off again, much easier to fit into our texture grid. And if we look at the checkerboard, we'll see negligible misshaping of our squares. They're pretty square still, which is pretty good. So you can move around the shapes that you've made. They're not sort of sacred and holy, but I wouldn't recommend doing it too much. Just use it where you have to. Okay, that's that sword done. Probably covered that one to death. I'm now going to show you a unwrap along spline. Now I'm kind of making up a scenario for this. This isn't really how you would normally use an unwrap along spline, but we'll go with it anyway. In fact, you know what? I'm going to just make a new problem. I'm make a new object where this is more suitable. So let's give it lots of height segment. Let's go crazy. 40 of them. And how are we looking? Yeah, that should be good. And I'll give it a bend modifier or something, just to make it difficult. Okay, because I've applied this bend modifier, some of my polys on one side are larger than the ones on the inside. And this means that if we try and use something like a pelt, which I'll show you shortly, that's not always appropriate. But there is an easy way to solve this problem. And this works even if... let's apply a taper as well to it, just to prove a point. Let's taper it in like that, so it's... this is an interesting shape indeed. Okay, so this is a nice problem shape here. Again, before I unwrap, reset selected, you can't be too careful. Collapse all. The way I'm going to unwrap this is I'm going to try and unwrap along a spline, but this is where you say, but Mike, you didn't start from a spline. Well, that's not a problem. We're gonna make a spline, and we want this spline to go perfectly through the middle of our geometry. So how are we going to do that? We have quite conveniently got a loop that runs right from the bottom right to the top, and because we started from a cylinder, now if we loop it, we'll go right the way to the top. But it's not running right the way through the middle, so the easy way to do that, this really isn't difficult at all, is to paste, using clone, Control V, I think of it as paste, but you know, it's called clone, a copy, hide unselected, so we're just looking at our copy. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select all of the rings, if I can get one of them, loop and then ring selection. I'm going to scale them, and scaling the edges in this way allows it to go straight up the middle without it scaling the height or anything like that. So if I now unhide everything, we can see that we've completely engulfed that, except for a little bit maybe at the top. You can see it there. No matter where I look from it, it's going straight through the middle. Nice. So let's make ourselves a spline from that. So I'm going to loop that selection, and I could have made this even thinner, but you know, this will do. It's near enough to the middle. And I'm going to create shape from it. So use create shape from selection button. Linear's fine. And now we should have a shape that we can unwrap along. So I'm just going to delete that object, and I'm going to select my cylinder object, this green one that I started with, and unwrap. I'm going to pick all of my faces, so go into faces, select all, bring up the edit window so we can see what's happening. So as it was a cylinder, this is actually probably alright as an unwrap, and what we're about to make probably isn't a million miles different. And now we use spline, we pick spline, and we can use the select by name button, and we've picked spline 1, and we now have an unwrap which is pretty even, and nice sort of square shape. If we'd have done something like a cylinder unwrap on all of these, so I'll come off of spline unwrap, then you'll see that it's going to miss in certain places, even if this was in the right place. I don't know why it's not in the right place. Bits of it have come out from it, so you'd have to scale it and fiddle with it, and it's basically not going to be right wherever you have it. Or we try a pelt. Very quickly, I'm going to explain how to do this in a second. So for it to be not pelt, it'll sort of spread it all out into this weird circle, which is pretty, but not very useful. And I probably could have done a better job of this, but you'll have to take my word for it. Pelt wouldn't have been as neat and tidy. So extrude along spline, kind of useful for that kind of a shape. Okay, let's get on to pelt mapping. I'm going to do basically this guy's body using a pelt map. So I'm going to go into editable poly. I'm going to so in fact I'll just do this upper torso, because that's a nice little section to do. So I'm going to actually hide all my other ones so they're not in my way. So at a sub-object level I'll hide unselected. There we go. And I'll collapse down the unwrap that I had before. And at this point we make an unwrap UV, and we slide down until we get to, and we go into faces, this section here, map parameters, and this is what we're going to be using. I'm going to turn off, where is this, show map seam. I just want to show the seam. I do want to leave that on, otherwise I won't be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to use point to point seam, and I'm going to cut off his head from the neck. And what this is doing is I'm just clicking, left click as I go along with point to point seam on, and I can skip several out at once, that's fine, around the neck. And we'll also go, I'm just thinking, should we do the arms separately? Yeah, why not do the arms separately? So you might be able to do them all together, but just for the sake of argument, this demonstration, I'm going to do them separately. So this is basically us making the seams. This is where we want our seams to be. You can think of this a little bit like clothing. Usually clothing seams are in useful places, but you've always got to remember that it's got to unfold in some way. So we've got to make a seam down one side so that when we sort of unfold it, it'll go somewhere. In fact, we're going to do it down both sides so that it'll unfold over the top of his shoulders, so we don't have to add in a line along here. I think that'll look pretty good. Generally try and keep it symmetrical if you can, so I went up this one on that side. I'll do the same on the other side. Okay, we then, with face selected, choose one of the faces. I right click there to get rid of that. If you make a mistake, go on to edit seams, hold down Alt and you can remove them here like this, but I didn't make a mistake, so I'm going to put that back. Right click again to get rid of it. Select one of the faces within an element, within a section, and expand face selection to seams. This button will go as far as your seams. So this is the chest piece here. We then go on to pelt, which will bring up this peculiar looking circle, and you can move this around, but generally you shouldn't have to. Usually what tends to work is just hit start pelt once, stop pelt, commit. This is obviously nonsense. We don't want this to look like this. We bring up the relax tool, relax by face angles, and start relax. And if you've got a good selection, a good pelt, then that should be all you kind of need. Just rotate it, scale it, and that's that bit done. Move on to the next one. So pick a face, expand to selection, pelt, start. Now what's happened here, because I've got a fist, I didn't think about how this is going to go around, so I should have done my fist separately. But I'm not really massively interested in showing you how I should unwrap a fist, so I'm just going to cut him off at the wrist. So let's pelt that again. Start pelt, commit, start relax, and done. And you can go over your whole model sort of doing pelts like this, and they're really easy. They're not something to be scared of at all. So pelt mapping is very good, particularly for complicated shapes that are fairly rounded. It's great for that, in conjunction with the relax tool. The relax tool is really the thing. If you take nothing away, use relax by face angles. It's very powerful. That's about all I've got to show you for unwrapping. This is the last in this series of videos. If you find it helpful, please do say thank you. It goes a long way. I really appreciate when people appreciate the trouble I've gone to. So yeah, I hope you found them helpful. Thanks for watching.